All right, guys, we're gonna finish it up this time. I promise. I'm sorry, it took 4 parts. That's what it takes. It's been several days, right? I'm doing this over several days, and I've had a break because stuff. But I'm back on it now. We're gonna finish this out. I'm gonna start another one. We'll see how far we go. I really don't know what to expect. Again, I haven't listened ahead, so let's sort of continue. Right, last time. John's thesis is, why does it matter if the source of creation, he didn't put it in those terms, cares? And I wanted to, upon reflection, I wanted to add a little thing to this idea of caring. And, just before he goes into channeling Buddha or a Zen master or whatever the heck he's going to pretend to do, John, in his Awakening from the Meaning Crisis series, talked a lot about agape, right? Well, there's eros, and there's storge, and there's agape, sort of a thing, right? Very good thesis, by the way. I actually like that outline. It's correct. It's the way I learned it. The problem is that John's so equivocate on love. That's why he likes agape. Fair. But I think when most people are talking about love, they're actually discussing something rather specific, and that is care. So I think if you listen in the world, you'll hear people say love, and what they mean is care. I want someone to care about me, about this, about themselves, right? Love yourself, care about yourself, care for yourself, right? Try swapping the words, see if it works. If it doesn't, they're using a different definition of love. Fine, that's whatever. We equivocate on love. That's John's excellent point in Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. I don't know that agape is as helpful as just swapping the word care. And, asking why does it matter that someone or something cares is backwards. Care is what gives meaning. Dun, dun, dun. I mean, maybe that's not a good sort of short form definition of meaning, but the fact that somebody is attempting to have a relationship of some quality with you, independent of your awareness of them, I think is a good analog for, we'll say, a poor but necessary understanding of meaning, right? There's a great quote. I carry it in my wallet. I've been carrying it since I was probably 15 or something retarded, by Molière. I don't even know who that is, by the way. It's just the quote. If I love you, what business is it of yours? I don't know why Molière said this. I found it hysterically funny and important when I was young, when I was, a million years ago. And I carry it in my wallet to this day. I don't know how that's possible. I've lost everything else from that time, but not that. Probably because it was on my person every day of my life. The idea is sound. If I love you, what business is it of yours? Right. It's a good question. That's what holds the world together, though. Caring holds the world together. So why is it important that the creator of all the stuff, including you, that enables you to exist, cares about you? Because you need a connection to the thing that transcends you, the thing that's above you, the thing that's greater than you, and everybody you know, and everything you know. That's why it matters. You want a connection to that. If you don't have one, I would argue that is the intimacy crisis. I will do more on the intimacy crisis. I know I have a couple videos on the intimacy crisis. I need more. I got to find more females to talk about this with, because still desperately afraid to talk about that without a female present. But that is the crux of the issue. I think the quality of a relationship you can have, we'll say, on the horizontal plane in the flat world, where most materialists or all materialists are stuck, is limited, and it conflicts with other things, right? And it can't bind lots of people together, or at least not over a very long period of time. The way we bind with a deep quality connection with other things is by having those other things in common that are above us or higher than us, that are greater than the sum of the parts of the connections being made, right? And what would the sum of the parts of the connections being made look like? It would look something rough analog, very sloppy. Right up front, I'm telling you, don't comment on that negatively, right? Comment on it positively if it helps you understand. That would be the parts involved, the relationships of the parts to each other, and the relationships of the parts to the higher thing. All of those sums do not sum up to the totality of that thing, right? In other words, the whole that is above is greater than all the parts, and the parts would include the relationships. And I think that's probably what was originally meant by that particular quote, by the way. I don't know who said it first, or any of that. But also, that is the non-materialism, right? The fact that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts indicates there's something non-material or unmeasurable, because sums are part of measure or rely on measure, that adds something to make it unique in a way that emergence alone cannot describe. That's my thesis. That's why caring matters, because that's where the intimacy is, or the intimacy with the thing that persists, is independent of us and outlasts us, right? And also enables groups to cohere. So with all that, let's jump back in.
And it's like, that seems to me to be making a category mistake. If ultimate reality, I'm going to let you use the word God for what you're talking about, right? Because we're trying to see if the two meet.
Okay, hold on. Now, irrespective of what was intended, what John did there was equate ultimate reality with God. I would call this a flattening of the world, okay? Ultimate reality and God don't actually have an overlap in that way. I don't know what ultimate reality is actually supposed to mean, because it's nonsensical by design. Again, probably unconsciously or subconsciously, but that can't make any sense. What do you mean ultimate? I mean, are you talking about the eschaton now? Because that's what it sounds like. In the end, it will be the most real or something. I don't know what ultimate reality means. It seems to me as though we have a part in reality, though, right? We help to shape reality. We co-manifest that which is real with the creation and the creator, right? Through our free will. That's pretty much how that works. I don't know why you would equate God, which is, Jordan's made it clear, like God cares about me, right? Or for me, or both, right? With a material, it's a fundamentally materialist idea, reality, right? Ultimate reality is a materialist sort of dead thing. Ultimate reality is dead. Reality is dead. That's the problem. And often materialists talk about it as though it's something to conform to. And if we could just figure out what that thing to conform to was, and it's based in materiality, of course, because they're materialists, how else would they base it? Then everything would be fine. And oh, by the way, I've got objective material reality, so I see it clearly. And if you saw the world the way I see the world, you would agree with me. That's their whole thesis. I will fight anybody on that, like actually anyone. I think I can boil it down to that in all cases with these science people, and that includes Dr. Peterson. I think he's making the same fundamental mistake. I don't think they can avoid it. They were sort of ensconced in science too long, and scientism creeps in, and materialism is inevitable in science. So, because it's the only thing science can deal with is material. Can't deal with the ethereal. Can't deal with the forms. And neither can philosophy, I would argue. Philosophy birthed science, not It's not a way out of it.
If ultimate reality is pure relationality in this non-escapist form of non-duality, that seems to preclude it from being any kind of thing.
Wow, what a bunch of gobbledygook garbage word salad that was. I don't even know how to approach that. You're using the word thing without defining thing. And therefore, you're saying, because word salad, this is not a thing. And that's actually okay, because God is also not a thing. And so who the hell cares? Like, you didn't refute the God argument at all. God has a no thingness. Yes, that's true. I don't know why anybody would ever talk that way. But I guess you can. It's not wrong enough that I can object, although I can be puzzled, upset, sick to my stomach, and having to deal with it. And that's fair. Sorry. I don't know why that's a compelling argument for anything. He seems to be relying on a more Protestant propositional idea of God as thing. It's also a mistake that Heidegger made. It's also the mistake that every 4-year-old makes. That might be a hint as to the nature of the mistake. I'm just saying. There are limits to language. God does not fit into thingness. Okay, sure. I don't know why John said that. It didn't change the game. But let's see what the response is going to be.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, you could. I mean, I think we're using analogies here, but obviously it's hard to talk about this.
Yes, it is. It is.
So I think the way to understand Jordan's question, which is perfectly legitimate from a Christian standpoint, because we say God loves me, right? And so
but I don't love my child because they love me. That's not agape. I love God. Spinoza, no, right? You shouldn't. If you genuinely love God,
then is there a sense?
Okay, hold on. There's another trick, right? At no point did anyone say you should love God because he loves you. But that's what John heard, clearly, because that's the argument that he's making, right? He's saying, well, I don't love my child because they love me. Well, okay, we weren't talking about children and we weren't really talking about love. Jonathan changed the word that Jordan used, which was care, to love. What did I just say? Swap the word, see what happens, right? It is the unconditional care that makes the world. It is care as such that makes the world. If you don't care, you will become hedonistic and destroy the world. By the way, look around, right? You see narcissism everywhere. Narcissism is a function of not caring about things outside yourself. That's actually a good short form definition of narcissism. If I do say so myself, glad I thought of it. That's what destroys the world. You look around. It's doing that now. We can see it. So I don't know why John's point is important, but let's take this seriously. So if care is the thing that makes the world, or at least holds the world together, or makes the world better or something, and you remove it and the world gets worse, that's a good evidence. It's not solid evidence, we'll say. It's not scientific evidence. Who cares? Science sucks. At least modern science, so corrupt, it sucks. But it's good evidence, right? And then you can harken back to a time when people cared, right? And again, this goes back to the intimacy crisis. The way to make a world is not to care about yourself or to care about yourself and others. It may be an upgrade. It's just the hierarchy is deep, right? It's to care about the groups nearest to you, right? And then a little less about groups further away from you, and then a little bit less about all the humans and all the animals or something, right? I mean, there's more stairs we could put on this staircase. But ultimately, you need to care about creation and the continuation of creation. You need to care about manifestation and the continuation of manifestation. If you build a house, that's a manifestation. You have co-manifested that from creation, right? There was a creation. In the creation, there were trees. Bang. Oversimplifying, I get it. Also important, right? You need to care about the creator in order to make a better world. Now, I can't make you do that. No one can. You have to do that on your own, hopefully. Otherwise, you're part of the problem. No, for real. Like, just telling you right now, that has to be true. Unless you reject my axiomatic assumptions, my first principles, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. Your day will come though. So just keep that in mind. And this seems to be what John's missing. Also, Jordan and Jonathan haven't made that argument yet either, but let's see if they get to it.
Of that relationship with the infinite. Like, is there a sense that
they love it? They love shunyata, if that's what you're asking.
The question is, does shunyata love them?
Why do you want that? You're agapic.
There we go. So there it is. So you can see one way to think about this. Well, there's a couple good ways to think about this. One way to think about this is what John just said is it doesn't matter if the thing above you loves you, right? That's fundamentally Gnostic. That's bad God. That's what it is, or that's what it will become over time, for sure. And that'll be nihilistic, for sure. I mean, it's already nihilistic in essence, right? Well, the thing that created us doesn't care about us, then why would it have created you? That's a good question. There wouldn't have been a reason, therefore it can't be true. There you go. That was easy. Another way to look at this is to say, John is emergence is good. He's happy with a one-way relationship, agapic relationship, where I don't care if I get love back because I'm super special and important and arrogant and a son of a bitch. And so I send my love up and that's sufficient. Really? Or are you an arrogant son of a bitch? Because, yeah, I'm going to go with that. Sorry. Also, no patience for this BS. It's BS. It's BS. I mean, John talks about that all the time. Well, guess what? You're there. And you're very clearly there. Of course it matters. One came first. And it doesn't even make any sense to put it in that order ever. I don't know why people have a problem with proper order. Creation mattered first because it is definitionally what came first. And there's no way around that because that's the axiomatic assumption of creation. Creation is that which came first. Duh. Okay. In order to have a creation, some entity, some way of super being, however you want to frame God, had to care. Otherwise, the action wouldn't have been taken and we wouldn't be here. That's not hard. Was that hard? That didn't seem hard. I send my agapic love up is emergence is good. I'm feeding the highest. But you're not. The highest already cared about you. You're just a parasite at that point. And you've denied intimacy. You don't want it to care about you because that has implications for your judgment. Right. I can be irresponsible. I can say emergence is good. All emergence is good is irresponsible. Because there's no one driving the bus with emergence is good. And all the things that happen, well, almost all of them, none of the miracles, but almost all the things that happen are explainable by science and manipulable by scientific method. Of course, science loves emergence is good. I would too if I were a completely immoral scumbag and arrogant, but I'm not. So, something to think about.
You don't want what you love to love you back.
No, I'm not saying what you want. I'm saying
if I'm looking for the ultimate, then I need to have the totality of all possible relationality contained within the ultimate. And an ultimate that does not contain the affordance for loving John, literally logically is less than one that does.
Bingo. I like Jordan's argument. I'm not the way I would have made the argument. Obviously, I made my argument my way. And I'm not, I'm not there to be kind, right? My job is not to be kind. Okay. That's not my job. Okay. We've had too much kindness and this is why we're in the mess we're in. Honestly, Sorry, just letting you know. And I'm happy that Jordan's doing this and not me, because I would not be kind. I would slay that dragon with no remorse. I have no patience for this. I've known John a long time, and he went astray years ago, unfortunately, and it's very obvious. If you're writing letters to Hermes, you're an occultist by definition. By the way, this is not even you're not hiding the ball there. That's a problem. Hermeticism is bad. That is Hermeticism. It's Hermes. Like it's not a verbal coincidence, right? So those spirits manifest and possess through you for a reason, and it always ends the same way for a reason. I'm just saying. You want reason, rationality, and logic? There you go. I don't know how you're getting around it and claiming those things. But I like Jordan's thing, right? Like, that way of thinking has to be lesser than the way of thinking where that extra affordance is coming down from above. Right. Emanation matters. It's another way to say it.
So that's it.
No, because you're engaging to what sounds to my mind like a performative contradiction. You're invoking ultimate relationality and then pinning it to the existence of a specific subject that is capable of a predicate, namely loving John.
Okay, good. No.
John's argument is ridiculous and insane, and he didn't deal with what Jordan said at all. What he did was he deflected. Right. What Jordan said was, if you have a field of relations and you have more relations in this other system, then the other system is superior. That is logically, rationally, and reasonably perfectly accurate and precise and correct scientifically. And what John did was he switched the frame and said, well, you're doing predicate, whatever, barf. Right? He's basically accusing Jordan of tying his statement back to a single person, right? In other words, the general for specific confusion, which Jordan did not do, by the way, at all. He did a perfect job. So let's see how he defends against this, because he's seen what John's done, right? He's like, oh, I see what you're doing. So let's see how he defends.
So that's perfect. So let's call it this is the Aristotelian error.
Okay, right. I like that name. Yeah. I don't like Aristotle, so go ahead.
John going all out here.
Note that John used Aristotle before to support his argument. I just want that to be clear. These are the sorts of sneaky little tricks these people play on themselves. It's not malicious. It's not even conscious for them. Sure. Also.
Yeah. So what I mean is I don't like the standard reading of Aristotle that's got taken up in modern philosophy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this notion that, how do we say it right? For God to love you, God must be a person in the sense of a substance. Mm-hmm. It's not right.
Yes, we agree on that then.
So for love to unfold the infinite qualities that are intrinsic to the nature of love, it must include within itself the quality of loving John. In fact, loving all of John's selves and all the John's quantum states, right? But John specifically is the example we're using right now. And any version of love.
Oh, my quantum states. I love that.
Yeah. Hey, the infinite is really big.
I just, hey, the infinite's really big. Great line, Jordan. That's fantastic. Yes. Of course, you'll notice there's a tell in there too. I did like Jordan's joke, but I actually stopped it for John's tell. John's tell is, Jordan says, all your quantum states. Okay. That's a joke, by the way, a very funny one if you know enough physics to be dangerous like I do. I mean, it's a joke and it's not funny. It's actually would be true, right? Because quantum states are effectively expressed as potentials in physics, right? among other things. I'm oversimplifying. I get it. Also, not wrong at all. Like they're expressed as statistical likelihoods, as potentials, right? So he loves all of your potential. Right. John's tell is he stops him basically and lights up and laughs and says, I like that. Of course you do. Of course you do, because it's a scientific frame for the word miracle. Because quantum physics boils down to a bunch of miracles. That's what it boils down to. Sorry, physics. Real physicists know this. I've talked to them. Sabine Hoffenfelder talks about this too. Like there's a lot of miracle in physics. She doesn't use that word, but effectively, there's a lot of stuff they don't understand and they don't know, and it's just at the limits of quantum physics and physics in general, and that. Sorry, like physics does know this, and physicists do know this, and people aren't physicists, deep physicists who've actually studied it deeply, somehow either forget or weren't taught. Physics has limits, big limits. The Big Bang doesn't explain anything. Also done by a monk, but that might be a hint. That's actually really important to realize. Oh, you can re-enchant the world and invoke science. Oh, I like that. Of course you do. Also, you're a lunatic.
That's actually the infinite is not really big. The infinite's not really big. Cantor was going to jump all over you for that one, but go ahead.
The infinite's not really big. I guess if you redefine the word, but I don't like to redefine words randomly on people for no reason.
And so any way of endeavoring to, how do you say it? Any ontological, that's not right either.
Yeah, this is hard, and I understand that I'm pushing you both really hard, but you're being very kind to me.
I don't know about John, but I've been doing a Monday, Wednesday fast. And so, Friday fast.
Are you doing strict fast?
So,
I'm sorry, Jordan.
And I thought, well, am I going to break fast? So I'm ready to go with John on this. You
don't have to do a strict fast. Nobody's forcing you to do a strict.
Actually, being faint is probably perfect, the perfect state.
Yeah.
In my weakness, his strength is
there you go. Exactly.
Jordan, can I say one thing that might be helpful? Not because I think it's full agreement, but it might close the distance and give you something to work with.
I'd like to know what the distance is at this point, because honestly, I don't know. I've heard agreement. I've heard disagreement, but the disagreement never relates to the previous statement. Not once. It's always a deflection or a general for specific confusion. In this whole conversation, not once has a disagreement actually been stated. Right? He's asked a question, why do you need God to care about you? Or why do you need God to love you? I don't know why we picked up the love word there. That's a mistake. And given that John has talked about this in Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, I'm surprised he's acquiescing to the word love. He moved to agape and we moved off of that. That's fine. As I said, I think care. I think I nailed that one. I do. Try it. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if the comments, if swapping love and care is better for you. The implication, and the scientists have been doing this for decades. There's an implication of a disagreement or a conflict at all levels. Like, religion and science are in conflict or disagreement. No, they're not. That's a lie. That's incorrect. It's factually incorrect. They are not. There's no overlap at all. Zero. They are orthogonal to one another for real. That's why when you ask them, what is the disagreement? They go into belief. Okay? Science is not about belief. It never was, and it never will be. Religion is about belief. Okay, I can go there. You may claim that you have changed your belief because of science, but science doesn't tell you what to believe. And it doesn't contradict the beliefs of religion. Religion is about telling you stories that allow you to live a better life. The so-called accuracy and precision of those stories is very much up in the air, although you'll notice that since this little fight between science and religion has begun, one thing has remained constant. The more you look, the more scientifically accurate the Bible appears. That's weird, unless it's not. I'm just saying. That happened, by the way. That's 100% clear. Sorry. Well, at least for the people who are foolish enough to still believe in the science narrative. The science narrative is devoid of usefulness to your life. I have asked, in the past week even, so many people this question. Like, what good does the knowledge of gravity do you? And what depth of knowledge of gravity is helpful to you? And they literally cannot answer the question, actually, for real. And I'm like, well, there you go. Maybe this knowledge thing is just not as important as people are saying. And we live in the age of gnosis. John would refer to this. I mean, John's the one, like, this is the frustrating part for poor Mark. I love John's work. I follow John's work. I'm pretty freaking on John's work. We modified John's work and we think improved it. If you can prove otherwise, that'd be great. But like, we've been trying for 3 years. Our improvements seem to be real. John talks about the propositional tyranny. And when he said it, I'm like, oh, there's something right about that and something wrong about that. The age of gnosis framing that I use on Twitter in particular is based on that. It's the same thing as the propositional tyranny at some point, right? The age of gnosis is the idea that knowledge as propositions is the highest value. That's what it is. So that came from John's propositional tyranny, just to let you know.
I feel welcomed, enveloped, afforded by agape, by logos, right? But I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't want to create the sentence, agape logos loves me, even though it's analogous to what it's like when somebody's loving me. Are you saying that? Because Spinoza's fine with that too. The same love by which I love God is how God loves himself. And the love by which God loves me is the same love that I have for reality. That's that kind of thing.
No.
Yeah. So the word salad continues. And you'll notice John keeps adding terms in here. I don't know why. Like, if you can't make your point with the terms, define them and move on. You'll notice that John's perspective is him. It's centered on him. He never talks about the perspective from any other angle. He never talks about the perspective from above, the emanation, or the perspective from other people. So I feel, oh, that's fantastic. Like, I feel, other people don't feel. Now what? Like, why is this an argument? I don't understand. I feel is not an argument for anything or against anything, really. Sorry. What if your feelings are wrong? What if you're a crazy person? What if your feelings don't correlate with reality? What if you're mentally ill? Like, what good is I feel? These are not rational, logical, reasonable arguments. I feel. Right? But you'll notice he's recreating the world from himself outward. This is sufficient. And therefore, and then he says, well, Spinoza's a crazy Gnostic heretic. Who cares? Another nutbag, clearly, right? Oh, this love and that love are the same love, right? And then John goes into the love equivocation that he complains about in Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. I don't know what that's about. It's a little crazy. It's like kind of a nutty move. But he skipped right past and only does it reluctantly at the end. You can hear his reluctance in his voice if you listen real carefully. If you can't listen that carefully, if you don't notice those things, that's fine. A lot of people don't. I do. This is why these things annoy me. As I notice all of these little tonal changes, it's also why I never watch videos at 1.5 or 2x. Well, not never, but almost never. I never watch stuff like this at 2x or 1.5x or any. It's slow speed. I watch the screen because that information of people's facial movements and their expressions and how they talk with their hands, hopefully they do, is really important, right? It's extra signaling. It tells you something about their emotional state that maybe their tone doesn't convey or convey clearly enough. Also their tone, right? And so if you listen closely to the speed of what he's saying and the ordering in which he's saying it, oh yeah, and the love God has for you is the same love. Okay, so he disagrees with Spinoza, but he invoked Spinoza. A little weird.
But what I'm saying is that the totality of all possible ways of entering into the relationship of love, including the ones that you have with your son, but not limited to, and much more, is contained in love, which is the name of God.
Oh, that's nice, Jordan. I like what Jordan did there. Again, I wouldn't have made the argument that way. I would have made that argument. But I like what Jordan did. I thought it was good, right? He's bringing it back to the core principles and not adding in logos, right? And all that nonsense. John added in logos without defining it. Of course he did. Because if he has to define it, he's going to be wrong again, and that's going to be a problem. And so Jordan just brings it right back to brass tacks. Which is an excellent move, right? And yeah, I want to point these things out because I know this is getting really hard to follow. I totally understand. Also, this is enchantment, cognitive overload. This is it. I've talked about it in live streams. I think I have a cognitive overload video. I don't know what I have for videos anymore. I have too many videos. But I definitely talked about it in a live stream. And in fact, I just did my last live stream. I did the Friday live stream was incremental improvement. I talk about it there too, right? This is a way to fight cognitive load.
Right. But so again, I tried to say something, and this is a little bit trite. It's something like saying, like, and to be fair to me, Nicholas of Cusa says this: love loves, and love is one with the beloved. He gets the Trinity out of love. Mm-hmm. There's love, there's the beloved, and there's the loving, right? But he says there's ultimately just love, and you shouldn't think of it as loving, although you can talk that way. So I'm quoting a Christian here, by the way. I'm not trying to impose something from the outside. Like I said, I don't have any problem with the idea that I said it a long time ago when I talked about agape. Agape precedes me, it'll be after me, it is through me, and I am totally indebted to it, and therefore I feel gratitude and gratefulness, and of course I mean logos as well as agape. And for me, that's what it's like that's what I hear when people say I'm being loved by God.
So what about something?
Okay, wow, here we go with agape and logos. Who talked about logos? Okay, another trick. Well, this guy was a Christian. Yeah, maybe not. I don't care. The word Christian doesn't work, right? It just doesn't. Sorry. Once the Protestant Reformation comes around, the Christian label doesn't work because the Protestants destroy the label with 1,000 denominations that all believe following Christ means something different. And oh, by the way, they threw out Mary, and they threw out symbolism, and they threw out tradition, and they threw out liturgy, right? They don't have a stable liturgy, a stable tradition. They just don't have it. They changed what confession means. They threw out confession and repentance. Changed what it means. You can look that up. It's just not. Even the Lutherans, their idea of confession is ridiculous compared to the Catholic. It's so different. It's not the same thing. And a lot of Protestant denominations don't have confession. Like, they threw out all this stuff. So I don't know what Christian means. I don't think it can mean anything helpful. They're just Gnostic pagans, as near as I can tell. You can call them Protestants if you want. That's fine. Anglo-Cathodoxy forever. Thank you very much. That's Christendom. The problem, one of the tricks that gets played is love loves itself, right? Love, that self-reference. Look, guys, I get it. Almost everybody I've ever met, including me on occasion, falls for that trick, right? You don't catch the fact that they're using the word to define the word. It's a self-reference, right? The thing that loves love is love. I didn't say anything. That doesn't convey information, not knowledge, not meaning. It doesn't even convey information because it's self-referencing. So what happens in your brain, this is the way your brain works for real. You can test yourself and find out if you're, maybe if 1 million people, not 1 million people, if 5 different people request it in the comments, I'll do a video on it. But basically there is a test, and I'd have to think, I'm not going to do it here anyway, but I'd have to think about how to do the test because it's been years since I've done it. There is a test that you can use on yourself, by yourself, with yourself to prove that you project into a self-reference. And you have to, right? I mean, you only do that if you assume the person you're talking to has something to say. I never assume that. I don't know why. I guess I'm just skeptical in a healthy way, in that way. And I'm like, maybe this person's saying something. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're trying to enchant me. Maybe they're trying to enchant me maliciously. Maybe they're trying to enchant me by error. Maybe they're trying to enchant me because they're ignorant. Maybe they've enchanted themselves and they can't avoid enchanting other people. I don't know. But just because somebody says something, I don't assume that they know what they're talking about. And I don't assume that they're trying to convey information or knowledge or meaning. I just never make that assumption. I try to judge on my own. And if you can't, that's fine. Maybe you shouldn't try. Fair enough. I'm just telling you, this happens. Self-reference is an easy tell. The love that loves the love is the love that love. Sure, fine, whatever. That doesn't mean anything. I can't make any sense out of it. You didn't convey anything. And it's effectively what John did. I know I'm being a little hyperbolic, but also that's what he did. The love that loves me is also the love that loves God, and the love that... What are you talking about? Obviously, the quality of love between a mother and a child is different than the quality of love that I have for my best friend. You can abstract them to love if you want. I get that. That's not an interesting trick. Abstraction is fantastic. But by defining them the same, you rob them of their quality. That's one of the downsides of abstraction. You rob it of its quality. And now you're not actually conveying enough information to be useful, right? So the quality of the love that the Creator has for you is different than the quality of the love you have for the Creator. And that's different than the quality of the love you have for your children. And that's different than the quality of the love you have for your friends. So love is not all the same love that love is love. I'm sorry. Just the way the world is. There is a differentiation. There is an ability to discern. They are different. And so you can't define love by saying love because that doesn't work. Right? And you'll notice that John substitutes this love plus logos. Now, featuring logos. 1995 order today, free shipping. With the thing, with God. He just says, yeah, that's the same as God. He said it flat out, like, it's the same. It's not the same. It's not even the same concept. Love is not the universe or the thing that holds the universe together by itself. And therefore, you can't equate it with the Creator. Right? It's a quality that is conveyed to you and emanates down upon creation and everything in it through grace, maybe. I don't know. Ask a theologian. And that's not just saying love 62,000 times. Sorry.
Like intimacy. Oh, sorry, quick. I got to do a rule check. So I got to go to our resident ortho bro. Because I don't know this stuff. Was Nicholas Lacusa a heretic?
No. I think, is he a heretic in the Orthodox Church? It's irrelevant. What date is Nicholas Lacusa?
He's in the 1500s?
Yeah, so it's irrelevant. It's like we don't talk about that because they're all heretics.
They're all heretics. Okay, good. So we can just throw them out with. No, I'm kidding.
He's not a heretic in the Catholic Church,
which means
so unlike Eckhart, none of his propositions were considered
questioned.
heretical either. Yeah.
And Eckhart, like we don't know which proposition we're questioning. Like Eckhart has been pretty much
exonerated.
Exonerated at this point.
Oh, nice.
Because we don't. His statements are probably the places that were questionable are probably not in his writings anymore. Anyways, we don't know what they were.
Yeah. So the topic that maybe I would put on there, and maybe even leave it there for the moment, is that there's this notion of the concept of intimacy, or the quality of intimacy, that must be present for, and again, I'm just sticking here to straight logic. If it exists at all in reality, then it must be an expression of that which is the ultimate. And the question is that actually part of this, of the infinite or the one or the ultimate? If you have a relationship of intimacy, and intimacy is reciprocal in nature.
Yeah.
You're vulnerable, yes, but there's also something like a reciprocal vulnerability. Again, back to the fact that Christ incarnated and actually died on a cross, right? For a variety of different reasons, but part of that is actually there's a reciprocity of relationality here. I mean, you're actually entering into a quality where, and by the way, an actual person, which is important, right? That the quality of personhood does not define God, but is a part of something that God is actually expressing. And I agree with you, of course, that hypostasis is deeper than personae. So that's, I think, a question that's probably worth circling around, is this very precise point of what is the essence of the quality of the relationship of love, and where does it sit in the larger kind of cosmologies and theologies?
Okay. I couldn't be happier. Nothing could make me happier at this point, except if it were light out and I was driving my convertible at the top down, assuming it weren't raining. That was great. I think Jordan stumbled a little bit over the wording from my limited perspective, right? Like, intimacy is the quality of relationship. That's how I define it. There might be other definitions. I don't know. I don't really care. Mine's right, and too bad. It's super useful to think of it that way. But he did invoke that concept. So all the concepts I just invoked, he invoked them differently. Again, I couldn't be happier. It's the intimacy that matters. It's the reciprocal relationship and the reciprocity. Absolutely, 100 billion% correct. This might be a better way to talk to John. I don't know. But I like what he did there. It confirms a bunch of stuff I've been saying for a couple of years now. So I couldn't be happier. Couldn't be more thrilled. Check out my Intimacy Crisis videos. I'll link the one with Andrew with the bangs is pretty good. I'll link that one here just because it's not on my channel, and it's one of her more popular videos, especially for somebody who didn't bring an audience with them. So it must be worth something at that point.
I just want to say something also about the idea that God loves us. The way, I think the best way to also understand that is the way this reciprocal reciprocity that we have, that Christ says, love God and love your neighbor. Mm-hmm. And that's also how God loves you, right? It's similar to what you were referring to before, John. In Dante, you see it very beautifully. We're actually doing a class on Dante right now. And the sense that God, the people that come into your life with love, that you enter into a loving relationship with, they are the call to love God. They are in some ways the draw. They're drawing you into the love of God by their love, right? You have this beautiful image in the comedy where basically it doesn't even say that God called, like, because it's too high, but there's a sense in which the Mother of God, the Virgin Mary, calls upon Dante's patron saint, who then calls upon Beatrice, Beatrice then goes and gets Virgil, and now Virgil comes to encounter Dante, and so you have this chain of love which moved up, right, the ontological ladder into God's love, which is pulling all these things into him. And so we can experience sometimes glimmers of this directly God's love, but to say God loves us is the same thing as to state that the world is good, right? It's the same thing. It's to say that all these aspects of reality are a piece of the ladder. They're an aspect of, not in a utilitarian way, but they're a ladder into God. They're a step. There's something which is possibly revealing God to me at this moment. And if I can be in the right posture, then I can climb that ladder. I can see through the love of those around me, through all of this that's pulling me into God. And the mysterious, the hardest part of it, and the most mysterious part of it, is that sometimes when the love of those around me is evacuated, where I actually encounter hostility, that also becomes a ladder for the love of God to pull me into Him, because it's as if now it's a more direct. I can have access to a more direct relationship with God, even when Christ says, "Blessed are those that are persecuted for my sake." That there's both of those are ways in which we can have this experience of the way that God loves us, both through the hierarchy of love of all the others, but then also when we are attacked and for wrong reasons, and for the name of Christ, you could say, and then all of a sudden the love of Christ will also pull us into Him. And if you haven't experienced it, obviously it's hard to describe, but it's something that you definitely do experience.
Wow, that was great. Jonathan's awesome. Again, I wouldn't have explained any of that way. But he, I don't know how deliberate this was. He added in the enchanted world, the hierarchy, the up. Look up, right? John this whole time has been doing emergence is good, and this is equal to that because we're all living on a flat world. It's effectively how he's talking. He's trying to use words that imply not flat world, but all his concepts are flat world, and he's bringing them down to equality. Right? The love that loves the love is the same love that I have for the love. Okay, you flattened everything. That's what self-reference does, among other things, like I said before. And Jonathan beautifully says, no, there's a hierarchy. And by God sending the love down the hierarchy, as written about by Dante, that pulls everybody up towards God. Sounds right to me. There's your reciprocal relationship. Just a reciprocal relationship up, instead of one that's stuck on a flat plane that's going to end in opposition, which is why John likes oppositional opponent processing, right? And I think, no, that's wrong. Cooperative processing is the correct answer, sir. Opponent processing is how you get war. It's how opponent processing ends. I don't like war. Might be necessary. Still don't like it. Like to avoid, please. Don't use opponent processing. Use this idea of the thing emanating down upon you, dragging you up. Yes, much better.
So those two things, Jordan's point about intimacy and what you just said, seem to go really well together in my mind, and I understand intimacy as the affordance of reciprocal opening. So I have intimacy if I can indwell somebody, and then they can indwell me. A deep, profound participatory knowing, and then that affords reciprocal opening.
Whoa, no. I'm just going to say no. Intimacy is a quality of a relationship. The nice thing about reintroducing hierarchy is the quality of the relationship changes as you go up the hierarchy. Because again, God can love everybody equally, but you can't. God has direct access to everybody, and you don't, at least in the Anglo-Catholic sphere. That's true. Because God encompasses all things and you can't, right? And so the quality, the intimacy level of that relationship is greater for God than it is for you. It's not a flat world. It's not equality, right? I don't believe that when John uses the term indwell, that means anything like what an Anglo-Catholic thinks, or certainly what Jordan and Jonathan think here. When somebody says indwell, or dwell within me, or any of that, the only word that comes to mind is pure arrogance. It's just arrogance. No one dwells within you. And the implication verbally from the language, from the word dwell, is that, at least the way John's framing it, is that they are doing the work and you're just there as a vessel. Well, that means you have little or no responsibility, but you're participating, okay? You're not participating if you're not involved. If somebody's dwelling within you, you're not involved, you're possessed, technically. That's a possession. I'm not a fan. Maybe you are. I don't know. I'm not recommending it. I've seen possessed people. Not a cool sight. I would say that John has Hermes indwelling in him right now. And he said earlier in the conversation, I forget if it was part 1 or part 2, I want Socrates and Jesus to dwell within me. You want 2 different demons to possess you. Okay. You say, Mark, Jesus isn't a demon. He is if he's dwelling within you. Sorry. Jesus is outside of you. He's bigger than you. He defeated death. I like, how can something that big be within you? Maybe there's an aspect of Jesus that runs through you. I would call that caring, or they keep using the word love again, which again, I would use that. Caring, sure. I would also say my capacity to care is not equal to Jesus. My capacity to anything shouldn't be equal to Jesus. That's what I'm trying to do, though. Hopefully, right? As an Anglo-Catholic, that's what you should be trying to do. But you shouldn't be there, and therefore, right? Obviously, not dwelling within you, because you can't contain him, because he's bigger than you. It's not that hard, really. It should be easy for materialists. I don't like this indwelling talk. I don't like it. I think it's dangerous, and I think it's a confusion, because the way a materialist will use it is possession, because it's the only thing they have. And the way a religious believer will use it is not possession, because they can understand a different dimension to the word dwell that is not available to a materialist. Period. Full stop. That's my case. I don't like it. You'll notice again, John's like, well, none of the things you said, are bad. They all fit in my head. Intimacy works differently at different scales. They may all fit in your head. Great. You kind of maybe have an understanding of them, or so you think. But you insisted there was a disagreement, and you keep saying there's no conflict. One of these things isn't true. I don't know which one, and honestly, I really don't care.
And again, I think I can have that kind of intimacy with what we've already agreed, with ontonormativity, which is really real, and I love it because it's really real, and I do experience it in, like Jonathan said, in logos agape, horizontally with other people, and upwardly and downwardly into the depths, and up ontologically. All of that is the case. But like I say, and maybe this is me, but I find that I don't deny that I can, everything I can resonate with that in Christianity. Jonathan, I was there in the gospel seminar, and I made that clear. But, right, I also...
All right, I got to stop it there, because this is already getting ahead of me, okay? There's a number of problems here. One is ontonormativity still has not been defined, okay? It's word salad gobbledygook for sure. I just guarantee you that, right? Like, you go down that, it's a rabbit hole. I get that. Like, at first, if you confront somebody who uses terms like this, they're going to immediately sound smart, right? And they're going to use more abstractions. They may be less abstract. They're going to use more abstractions, though. And they're going to start referring to things that are definitely things, right? And then you're going to get confused, but those things won't correspond with what they said again, right? So this is the trick. You use ontonormativity, you go, Mark, what's ontonormativity? Well, there's an ontology, that's a categorization, right? But it's also being, can't be both, by the way. And there's a normativity to it. It's like, okay, well, how are you defining normativity? Right? And it's gonna that's gonna possibly degrade into, well, a lot of people see the same thing, sort of an argument. Eventually, not right away. Eventually, that's what normative means, right? It means it's within the normal distribution. Basically, it's a math problem. The reality is not a math problem, right? He equated that with reality and said, that's what I love, and that's the same as God. He said that again. And then he said, I like what Jonathan invoked. Listen very carefully to what I'm going to tell you, right? He said, Jonathan invoked love and logos. No, he didn't. That didn't happen. Just to let you know, that didn't happen. Jonathan did not do that. Okay, John did that several times now. He said the logos, the logos love, right? He did all that. Jonathan didn't do that. That's a trick. He's already cognitively overloaded you. And oh yeah, Jonathan invoked the love logos thing. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He said love is separate and love comes from God. That's about all he said. And again, there's all this word mixing, which again, I think it's the opening of Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. It's one of the first few episodes. John talks about one of the big problems is equivocation. Really, John? Well, if you could stop doing that, that would help. There's a lot of equivocation going on here.
Have that in the depths of Buddhism, Zen, especially, or the depths of Neoplatonism, and again, and maybe this is ultimately, maybe we're pushing on something that is maybe something that we can't ultimately get out into a formal thing, right? And I may be, I may be asking for something that I can't ultimately get. But what I hope I've offered is a way of explicating a lot more what you were saying, Jordan. And I think this is a much better answer, if you'll allow me, to Jim, than the one that you were trying to work out. Because I think that's as a friend, because I think this is the kind of thing that is the way you try to persuade people why you're a Christian in a way that I think is profoundly, has a potential to be what I hope you think it is, or want it to be, which is profoundly calling to them, rather than, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like we went down this, and there was I thought this was really good. I thought this was genuine, and I'm not trying to escape now or anything like that. but do you understand what I'm saying? I like there could be a point where we're looking for a difference that we can't, that's ineffable, that like, because I keep saying, yes, I have that, right? And not trivially so, because I'll say this and you'll go, yes, that makes sense, right? But I'm not.
All right. Wow. Right on the edge of actual insight, and then 180 away from that. I like the word ineffable. I use it all the time. Thank you very much. Especially the thing John did at the end, where, well, I like that. You said, you agree with that. And actually, I don't think that happened once in this conversation. I don't think Jordan and Jonathan ever agreed with what John was saying. John agreed with what they were saying. A lot of projection going on there, as near as I can tell. I mean, I might be wrong, but certainly on the important things, they didn't agree. The other thing he said that was really just flat out disturbing was, it's the depths of Buddhism. It's the depths of Neoplatonism. First of all, he can't make that argument with Neoplatonism. Period. End of statement. Full stop. He can't. He lied about the Buddhist argument. Flat out. Sorry, John. It's a lie. They don't have anything that resembles prayer. They have meditation. Meditation is inward looking. It's not outward looking. Right? It's not a participation with another entity or another being or better yet, a higher form. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, higher form. Prayer is in participation with a higher form. Meditation is not. I like meditation. I do meditation. There's nothing wrong with meditation, not prayer. They are similar, yes, because you do them sort of by yourself. But one is a participation with something outside of yourself and higher than you, and the other isn't. And in Buddhism, you can go, but Mark, the Buddha's higher than you. Yeah, not according to Buddhists, buddy. If you see Buddha on the road, you're supposed to run him over, kill him, or ignore him. I can't tell which. It doesn't matter. The point is pretty clear. Buddha's not better than you. That's the point. Sorry, bro. That's explicit in Buddhism. 100% clear. Couldn't be more clear, right? Unless somebody beats you until you get the point. So no. Still no. Hard no. Didn't happen. This idea of the depths, but all you're saying is you have to study these things deeply to get the basic, most important point out of it? How horrific. Then it's not accessible to everybody. That sounds elitist. That doesn't sound good. That sounds bad. Anglo-Orthodoxy is supposed to be accessible to everybody, even people who don't go to church and don't read the book. Wow. In some ways, it's a low bar. In other ways, it's a high bar because you have to love God and love your neighbor. Right? That was easy. Doesn't seem deep. More accessible because it's not as deep. I mean, that's what you use the word deep for, right? Deep is an expression of accessibility. And to some extent, how much work you have to put in. So, Platonism and Buddhism, even if they contain the same thing, which they most certainly do not, it's deep. Okay. I want it accessible to more people. Christianity for the win, Anglo-Orthodoxy for the win. Thank you very much. We're done here. We're done here. How's that? Yeah. Better confirmed. That was easy. Wasn't that easy? It seemed easy. But these claims are really disturbing because they're just flat out wrong. And I bet you didn't notice. And I don't think they're going to get appropriately pushed back on. They haven't so far. No shade to Jonathan and Jordan. Look, enchantment's real and it's really hard to get around, especially when you're talking to somebody, that you have a relationship with. This is actually the Rousseauian complaint to some extent. Oh, society gets in the way of us being good because if I didn't have all these people that, effectively manipulated me by their existence, yeah, but they exist, so who cares? It's not optional. I'd be good. And of course, Rousseau is famous for being the horrible person. So his thesis is bankrupt by his behavior, right? So just notice all that, right? And just notice how hard it is to get out of these enchantments. Look, I think I said this before. If I didn't say it earlier, I apologize. I am not claiming I would have done a better job in this conversation at all. That is not my claim. I have the privilege and the advantage of being able to listen to this with 3 perspectives, plus my own. I just have a superior position as the result of that. Sorry, this is the way the world works, right? That's why it's easier to critique than it is to create, right? A lit crit can critique a story. Well, that's easy. A 4-year-old can critique a story. Sorry, you get 0, or you get negative points for that with me. Can they write one though? Can they write one better than the guy they're critiquing? Because if they can't, I got questions about your critique. I'm not saying it's invalid or that you're wrong about anything, but also, are you sure? Because if you can't do what they can do, maybe you just don't understand it. And maybe if you do hit on a valid critique, it was an accident. Oops, that's always possible. A broken clock is right twice a day. So, I'm in a superior position. I don't know that I would have done any better. Maybe one day I'll get a chance to try. That would be fun. I'd love to talk to Jordan Hall and or Jonathan Peugeot. Actually, I'd love to have several conversations with both of them publicly. That would be wonderful. I'd be happy to talk to John. I've tried to talk to John before. John was not happy with our revision of his model. You can check out the model engine, the knowledge engine model rather, on the channel. I've got a live stream of it too, which is a little bit more up to date, but you know, the original video is fine. So he just didn't like it. He couldn't give a valid critique. He didn't try to give any critique. He said, I don't like it, and that might be me. And we were like, fair enough. It might be. We were disappointed because we really wanted his help to make it better, but we didn't get it. I don't know. We didn't get it. It sucks. I'm not happy about it. Also, water under the bridge. Who cares? Good to know, though. It's not like we didn't have a relationship with John. It's not like we didn't reach out to him. It's not like we weren't on all the Q&As that he did on the Discord and stuff. We were. It's not like we weren't helping. We were. I worked with the Vervaeke Foundation for like a year. Didn't go anywhere, unfortunately. But these are important pieces of context, right? So that's why I don't think, John's busy having guys like Digital Gnosis on his channel who didn't even bother to read a single paper he wrote and was a bad faith actor from the beginning. You don't do your research, you're a bad faith actor. Just period, end of statement. So he's not going to talk to somebody like me who actually has his stuff together and has read his work. Fair. I wouldn't talk to me either. I have the advantage. I definitely have the advantage, right? And that's true here. So don't go thinking like, oh, Mark would do. I don't know that I would, and I don't want to. I don't want to critique John, but some things have to get done.
I'm not trying to be reductive either. Sorry, now you can see that I'm running out because I'm starting to go into aporia. So I'll stop and let you two respond to what I just said.
Well, it's interesting. So what I noticed was that I definitely don't want to persuade anybody. I don't necessarily even want to call anybody, which is weird because I know that that's, I think, what you're supposed to do, but whatever.
Yeah, it is, kind of.
So I want to make something clear here. John's assumption was that Jordan was trying to persuade people, and Jordan's just denying it flat out, which is correct. I don't know why John made that assumption. Also, John's assumption that his way of persuading or the language that he was using is better is wrong because you and I and everybody else was confused by his language. That's not to say it didn't work. That's enchantment. I would rather not have people, quote, converted by enchantment. That's not to say that enchantment doesn't play a role. But if you didn't understand something fundamental, so one thing to understand is go to any of Jordan's earlier talks from like a year ago with John and just listen to like 5 minutes of Jordan talk and tell me whether or not you think he's more clear now. Because that is an argument. Wait a minute. He used to talk really high up. And now he talks much more down to earth and sensibly. And also kudos. I don't know why he's on my Twitter feed. Maybe I follow him. I don't even know. Apparently he's in the Asheville, North Carolina area, and there's a lot of flooding from Hurricane Helene, and there's a lot of problems with the federal government because they're all corrupt. And he's been helping out with his church over there. So kudos to Jordan. I'm not saying he wouldn't have done that before he, quote, converted or whatever. But like the way he was talking about the work that was being done there, that he was doing with his church, was excellent. And I could really relate to it. And I haven't been able to relate to Jordan that well before. So there is, to my eyes and ears, a marked change in him that I like and I think is good. There's a reason to follow him. Enchantment with ontological, normative, primordial, presuppositional logos love or logos agape, not so much.
All I want to do is tell the truth.
best answer ever. All I want to do is tell the truth. Right. I mean, I might add to that and exemplify the good, which I just said that's what Jordan's doing. That's not an argument of persuasion. I think the science people have to rely on persuasion, right? Because they don't have a good story. Why do I need to know about gravity in that way? Oh, why are superconductors important to my existence? Are they? Are they even going to work in a practical way ever? Are they ever going to get out of the lab? I don't know. They might not, by the way. I mean, it's not clear that they will. They may change my material condition, but that won't improve my spiritual condition at all. There is nothing science can do to improve your spiritual condition. I would argue there's nothing philosophy, because again, I've made this argument before. It is science can do to improve my spiritual condition. Can it help me on my spiritual path? That's up to me. Oops.
And all I want to do,
though.
all I want to do is follow as best I can the model that Christ laid down for us, and to the degree to which the Spirit puts something for me to do it with as much skill as I can, which is not much. Because I don't, it's critical. I don't understand. I definitely know that it's the weird thing. It's like the invert, that Socrates thing. I am quite certain that I don't understand how any of this works, and that anything that I might try to do is definitely a bad idea in a very particular kind of way. And so I'm really glad that you asked us to have this conversation. I had a very distinct sense that this is, it will rile a bunch of people up, but, as you said, though, what was it called? Persecuted in his sake, in his name. But I feel like what we did was useful in a big way. And good, very good.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to partially disagree with Jordan here. I think there's a lot of enchantment going on, Jordan. I think it was good for you three, for sure. I agree, 100 billion% agree with that. I think it was good for Mark because he's done this wonderful 4-part series, sort of pointing out a different perspective so that you get an idea of what's going on. You notice I didn't use the term deconstructing because no. That's invalid way to speak about the world. No one deconstructs anything ever. They may give their unique perspective, and that may be helpful. It also may be fantasy. That's the problem with the quote deconstruction. Might be fantasy. Maybe you can't deconstruct the thing, or maybe your deconstruction is invalid. Did you ever think of that? Because what's the difference between deconstruction and destruction? Do you know? Is there a difference? There might not be. And if there is, do you know? Because if you don't know, someone's going to quote deconstruct and it will actually be destroying the thing. Girard does this, by the way, with his idea of quote Christianity. I don't think Jordan is talking about the inverse of Socrates. I think he's very close to Socrates, right? Socrates is again saying, "Oh, I know what I know, and I know when I don't know stuff." So I don't talk about the stuff I don't know. That's basically the implication there. Unlike this other guy who does do that. He thinks he knows and speaks as if he knows because he thinks he knows. Socrates doesn't make that mistake. That's wisdom. And so I would say Jordan is showing wisdom, right? Especially, I know that, I shouldn't try to do stuff. Yes. I mean, I partially disagree with that. You should try to do certain things, but yeah. The grand sort of scheme things you shouldn't try to do.
Well, thank you. I mean, this is, if you'll allow me, I'm trying to, and I'm showing up in good faith. So this wasn't instrumental or anything. I have affection. I showed up in good faith. But this is the philosophical Silk Road. I'm trying to get to where we can get into these deeply mutually transformative, right, dialogos about relationships to sacredness, such that it's reasonable to believe, in the Belaban sense, that we're affording the advent of the sacred. We're affording its presencing in people's lives in a way that could matter to them, and so that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't, and I hope I showed.
Oh wow, this is that presumption trick again, right? Look. You're watching a video like this to get some to get something. Okay? Probably something, quote, transformative for you. Right? I get that. I'm not going to comment on whether or not that's a good telos or purpose or goal to have. What I will say is that John presumes that that's happening. I didn't notice a change in John's stance at all. I noticed him agreeing a lot and then implying disagreement without stating it. So I don't think he's moved at all. I didn't notice any change in Jordan and Jonathan. Their position hasn't moved that I can tell, but John sort of implies that it did, through the dialogos, sacred magic, sacred dialogos thing, relationship. It's word salad. They're all valid words. But they're super abstract and they're way out of any kind of reasonable context. So they can't convey meaning. But you'll insert meaning. You will, because you're looking for transformation. You're looking for these guys to make some progress of undefined method. And your idea of progress and my idea of progress were probably different. I just said I didn't see anybody move. And look, I think this is a super helpful conversation, not just because I get 4 videos out of it at great cost to my sanity and possibly the loss of several IQ points. But it's good to have this to give my 4th perspective on it to you guys. And it's already worked, which I'm actually quite touched by. 2 different people commented on the first video and said, I realized I'm being cognitively overloaded and that's bad. And one of them's like, I'm going to start a new practice. I was like, I can shut my YouTube channel down now. I don't even make any more videos. Mission accomplished. It's fantastic. And thank you very much. Like, I'm just thrilled that got across. That's part of my message. Like, watch out for this stuff, guys. You're going to be overloaded. We're in a flood. That's part of being in a flood. Which is not to say these kinds of conversations shouldn't happen, but also, right, they should be more careful about the audience. I think one of the mistakes that people make, look, I'm being, quote, pretty hard on John, maybe a little too hard at times. I don't know. It is what it is. It's my video. It's my channel. I do have a relationship with John, so too bad. And if I ruin that, then so be it. Jonathan and Jordan are, I guess I'll go with too nice just to be cheeky. But I think they're too forgiving of what's happening in the conversation. They're too willing to speak, we'll say, at John's abstract level. They're too willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't like any of this. I don't think it's a positive. I think they're too focused on John and not focused enough on the audience. And one of the things I try to do, I do this in my tweets and I do this in my live streams. I do this in conversations with people. This is a bad frame, and let me back up. Sorry. I'm speaking to the audience more or as much as I'm speaking to my interlocutor. Okay? A lot of times when I'm talking, particularly on live streams, any live stream, not just my own, I got in mind several people, or not necessarily individual persons, we'll say, but several sort of patterns that I've seen people display, and I'm trying to convey something to them as well. So my target audience is not just who I'm talking to. And it could be argued that because of that, I don't get my point across clearly to the person I'm talking to. And you know what? I'm actually okay with that. Because this is a bigger issue than the person in front of me. And I'm not sure that Jonathan and Jordan are able to do that as well as I would like. It's quite possible that they're doing it better than I can understand. I don't know. I'm not going to critique that. I'm just going to say that from my perspective, and this is where this is where I'm at a disadvantage. From my perspective, those two in particular were not speaking well to an audience that would resonate with John's language. They're probably speaking really well to the Anglo-Catholic audience who's going, yeah, you guys go. And maybe that's their goal, and maybe that's fine. I'm not going to judge that because I can't, right? I know I can't. But from my perspective, it would be better if John got pushback on some of this gobbledygook, because some of it is gobbledygook. Sorry, John, it is. So that they're not enchanted by the ontonormativity, agape logos dialectic, because none of that's a thing. So, transformation, and therefore a lot of presumption. I don't like it when people presume in that way. Like, you have to presume to some extent, but like, I don't like it when they push their presumptions out. You'll also notice one theme in this talk is John is often pushing things out and saying, I've been here in good faith. Well, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe your, quote, good faith was hijacked by your desire to be in on the conversation. And maybe you were seeking to understand, but it sounded a lot to me like you were dragging Christianity down and trying to make the case that Buddhism is the same and that God is the same as ontonormativity agape, which you pretty much stated outright, by the way, and that Neoplatonism too, and therefore, which is a case you didn't make at all, not even a little bit, but you just dragged that in at the end. All your good faith intent in the world is irrelevant if you don't follow through. And maybe you don't follow through because you're not able to. Fair enough. Like, sure. There's lots of stuff I'm not able to do that I want to be able to do. Still can't play piano or guitar. I don't know what to tell you. I intend to. I really wish I could. I've tried in good faith. It still ain't happening though. And we see that's dealing with reality. Reality is partial definition. Reality is that which objects to your subjective experience. Subjectively, I want to be a good faith actor. I want transformation in dialogos, and I want my interlocutors to transform too, because dialogos. Sure. But that's not something you can do. It's something that might happen to you, that might emanate down upon you or be revealed to you. But that's not something you can do. Your intent is irrelevant to reality. Oops. That sucks.
Showed up that way. I wasn't trying to refute anything. I wanted to get the juice out, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think there's also something that this is, and I want to be careful, so that people don't take this the wrong way, because I really am a Christian in every way. I really believe Christianity is the fullest revelation. But there's also a more practical aspect, which is that there's a real practical aspect to the idea that we can't be meta. Like, we're not meta practitioners. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. And I think that's important too, is that the reality of being a Christian is not lived in asking, how better is it from Zen, let's say, right? It's lived in your morning prayers and going to communion and to confession and to, and living it with your family and your community. So that's also that's something that can't be completely ignored, right, in the discussion, that although there are probably better people than us to argue the fine points of theology and of and the differences, let's say, in the metaphysics of the different systems. At least I know that there are better people than me to do that. But there is also that other part, which I think is important, which is like I said, that the Christianity I live is, that's it. It's like I go to church on Sundays, and
Sure.
I live my life in relationship with God, and it's something that's real and existential, and I actually, although it has happened in my life where I've had to ask myself that question, about different systems in moments of crisis, let's say, that is definitely not something that feeds my everyday life. Like I don't ask those questions most of the time.
I don't want to trespass.
Okay. I like what Jonathan did generally. The word meta is garbage. Throw it out. Metaphysics is garbage. Just religion. I have videos on that, on the religious patterns and metaphysics. I have videos on that. You can check them out. I'll link the metaphysics video here so you can see why I hate that word. I think Jonathan, whether he intended to do this or not, I have no idea. I have no access to his brain, and I won't pretend to, unlike some people. Jonathan very cleverly said, we don't live our lives in abstractions. We don't live our lives with fancy theology type words, right? We're not theologians. We don't live that way. What he calls Christianity, I'm going to continue to try to call it Anglo-Cathodoxy, is all about participation in the world on a day-to-day basis. It's what you do day to day, day in, day out. I'll go back and invoke Jordan Peterson. You believe what you act out, right? Yes. Yes. There's no mystery to belief. It's not mysterious. It's revealed in your participation. Period. End of statement. Is that complete? Maybe not. But you know what? It's all you have is other people's participation to judge them by. You don't have access to their hearts and mind or their psychology or any of that. You don't have access to that. You may think you do. It's a lie. You don't. Right? You have access to their actions in the world, their participation in the world. That's what you have access to. You don't have access to anything else. You can't trust what they say. I've proven that in this conversation. I can prove it more if you want. You don't always say what you intend. And when you say something, sometimes it gets misinterpreted. So you can't trust words. You can't trust propositions. You can trust participation. You can sit and silently have a meal with somebody. I've done it. It's lovely. You can go out and just start working and work alongside somebody in silence. It can be done. And that's beautiful. And it's a miracle. And there's no propositions required. I'm going to be onto something there. The propositional tyranny is using abstractions, not only using abstractions, but also using abstractions and to hold this elite position. And Jonathan's basically denying the elitism. And again, is he doing this consciously, rationally? I have no idea. I don't care. It was done. And I would argue that Anglo-Cathodoxy should point in that direction all the time. Not theology is bad, but also the magic, the power, the ability, the importance, which is accessible to every single human being, no matter what their level of cognition, is in the participation towards the good. And it is not in the fancy words, the abstractions, and the propositions, and the understanding, and the questions, which Jonathan rightly, these questions come up. Yes, they do. But you can just participate and move on.
Most people don't either, because they live in the world that they live in. And
I'm not trying to trespass on that at all. But you don't want that to become a justification of insularity.
No, obviously.
Right? Because and this is part of, I think, where Jordan and I still agree. The world needs to form a kind of common unity, or else we're in a lot of trouble. And it's not going to happen. And now we're in the practical domain now. So we've all agreed, we've left down the theology. It's not going to happen by converting the world into Christianity. At least you've been trying for 2,000 years. It hasn't happened.
Wow. This is the most backwards ridiculousness John has mentioned. Okay. Everything he was talking about was I, my perspective out. I don't understand how participation causes insularity. That makes no sense. Participation is actually the opposite of insularity. If you participate with others, you're not being insular. If you're a hermit, you're insular. If you're a monk, maybe you're somewhat insular, right? If you're a clergy in the church, you're insular. Sure. Also, all of that is necessary. So too bad. Some amount of insularity is required because you need boundaries, you need containers, and they need to be different because there's different types of people in the world. I don't know why that's not clear to absolutely everybody, but I get it if it's not. Like I'm not trying to be dismissive. He's the one that rejected the binding to a common good or a common God, and then using the argument that this Christianity hasn't worked. What standard are you using to measure? Did Neoplatonism work? Because that was a bunch of people small groups who disagreed with one another. The world wasn't more unified before, quote, Christianity comes on the scene. Quite the opposite. To such an extent that history decided to measure itself effectively by the dawn of Christianity. That's kind of a big deal. So all science effectively measures itself by Anno Domini, which is a statement about the appearance of Christ on the scene effectively. And your argument is Christianity hasn't worked? What time frame? What are you talking about? What are you measuring? Where are you getting this argument from? This is a bogus argument. What, it didn't do what you wanted in the way you wanted? Oh, that I have no doubt. It's not perfect? Really, genius. It's almost like we live in a fallen world. Maybe somebody should have written that down in a book a couple thousand years ago, and never mind. This is bizarre. This is just bizarre. I'm sorry if this is harsh, but my goodness, this is nuts.
And so I have a good inductive argument. And so I think, again, we're now agreed that we've moved into the practical domain. At this practical domain, trying to afford this kind of deep dialogos is, I think, what is pertinent now in that practical domain.
Yeah.
Afford deep dialogos is not practical. You haven't defined dialogos. We don't even know what an actual affordance is. We don't know what an affordance is in speaking, because it actually doesn't really make any sense, right? The only affordance in speaking is speaking the same language. But that's insufficient. We already know that. More conversation got us here, guys. It's not getting us out. It got us here. You can measure the amount of conversations we've had. It's increased in the past 20 years, not decreased. So no, we can say for certain there's a negative correlation with conversation and things getting better. So no, I'm just going to go with a no. So affording a deep dialogos is not a solution to anything, and it certainly won't cause people to agree on something higher that binds them. It can't. And this is more of that middle out, flat world, emergence is good. We're all going to connect by dialogosing together in transformation through the agape logos. John pretty much actually laid that out, by the way. I'm playing with it a little bit because it's a little silly. But also, like, that is actually what he said twice. So just saying, that's not going to happen, right? And he's insisting that they've agreed that they're into the practical. He didn't agree to that. He just said, yeah, we're in the practical. And then he said affordance agape or affordance dialogos. And insisted that's the solution. And you can see on his face right here, he's angry. He's like, oh, he's adamant. Oh, this is my thing. I agree. I agree with you. We're in the practical now because dialogos is here.
Well, I think there's always room for learning from each other, and I think I don't think that's not a problem at all. I don't see that as an issue, and you can even learn from other people's. You can meet a Muslim, meet a Zen practitioner, meet a Jew, meet someone who's not in your religion, and find deep admiration of their moral strength, of their faith, of their of how they're transformed by something that is beyond them. And I think, at least in my opinion, I don't think that that's an issue at all for me. And so I think that there has to be ways that we can encounter others and learn from each other and see what's good about other world without it being trying to formulate constantly which world is better. Like,
No,
you see what I'm saying? Like,
you just articulated the philosophical Silk Road. That's exactly the philosophical Silk Road project, as you just articulated it.
Okay. So this is a different definition of philosophical Silk Road, just telling you right up front. Okay. People can talk to each other from different religions. Okay, thanks. That was true before. That's not philosophical. That's religious. So I don't know why we're injecting the word philosophy into what would have been called ecumenism. Also bad framing for me. People from different religions can talk to each other and get something out of it. That's been going on for thousands of years. Is this supposed to be an innovation or something new or different? Or what happened to the fact that doesn't solve a problem? Because that's been around longer than Christianity and also hasn't solved the problem that John mentioned. So why is this suddenly good? Like, I don't understand why he's even bringing this up. Other than to take credit for something that Jonathan said. Sorry, because that happened, like, intentional or not. Again, I don't have access to people's intentions. And honestly, I don't care about your intentions. I care about your actions. Because your actions affect me and your intentions are completely unavailable to me.
Yeah, it definitely isn't ideological, right? You can say for certain this definitely has nothing to do with competing ideologies or the desire to create a totalizing universal meta ideology. Right? Definitely not that.
Even eschatologically, if you look at the way that's described in Scripture, the idea that all people are going to become Christian is just not there. It's just not in the story. Like, it actually seems to go the other way. It actually seems to go like, a bunch of people are going to become Christian, and then people are going to hate you and they're going to persecute you. So it's not gonna play out like in this. I think that Islam has might have a more of a tendency to think that we're just going to get everybody's going to become this thing. Although Christians have, definitely are evangelized, but I don't see how even in Christianity's own cosmology, you can imagine that at some point everybody's just going to become Christian, like in the eschaton,
Yeah, I mean, there are Eastern Orthodox, David Bentley Hart, who are Universalists.
In the eschaton, though, he's not a universalist in Chronos, is he?
Yeah, David. I love David Bentley Hart. I loved his writings for many years. I thought he was amazing. I think sadly, he's slipping into syncretism. His universalism is pushing him towards more of a syncretic approach, and so I think that's kind of too bad. A lot of his ideas are still really useful.
You mean bad syncretism, because all religions are syncretist in some fashion.
Yes, but they're not. They're not. So everything that exists is syncretist to some fashion, and then it finds unity in the multiplicity. But you mean
a fragmented syncretism?
What I mean is that when you formulate it as syncretism, like when you formulate it as a kind of as a kind of multiplicity that isn't joined, that doesn't have to be joined in some kind of unitary practice, then I think that's a dangerous, like hodgepodge. I think that
I get what you're saying.
Is very
that'd be temptation. right? Temptation, which is the inverse of communion, that which brings a multiplicity into a false unity that is actually just what's that called in material science? Like we take sand is actually not actually a whole thing if you melt it into glass it is.
Yeah.
So something that's interesting just to think about is the degree to which we each have particular callings. We're friends, and I think becoming better friends, which is really fun.
Yeah, I love it too.
And those callings are distinct, right? John is called to this philosophical self-road, and that's a thing, and that's a role. It's a critical element of what's going on. And Jonathan is, clearly just getting better and better at looking really good on the internet and embodying beauty in a way that's just, impossible to avoid. With any luck, right? My calling is to retire peacefully and quietly in the mountains of North Carolina and eat barbecue. So it's very liberating, actually, I think, to recognize that if we live the way that we're living, following our calling, and entering into relationships that are truly grounded in this requirement of to love one another, then whatever else is happening, we're doing the right thing.
But I do like what Jonathan said there. I mean, what Jordan said. I like what Jonathan said too, but I like what Jordan said there. But I would disagree this calling the philosophical Silk Road. Sorry, man. I think you're just being too kind to John. And it's not kind enough. He really needs to be told by somebody he respects that he's off the deep end. This whole talk is completely off the deep end. John is saying there's a disagreement. He's never stated the disagreement clearly. He's using words without defining them. He's adding words into the conversation without defining them. And lowering Christianity down to this crazy idea that it's the same somehow as Buddhism, that Buddhism has the same thing as prayer, that it doesn't matter which one you choose. But all that is false. It's just observably incorrect. And reality objects to that frame. If you grew up in the West, the odds that you understand Eastern philosophy are almost zero. For real. Because there's a cultural context around the ideas. So you have to, maybe walk with me for a second. And look, I apologize. This video is long. It's way too long for me. I'm super tired. I'm going to sleep for a month. I don't release anything for like 2 years. That'll be why. It'll be this that did me in. Part 4 in particular, this has been really difficult. I'm quite disturbed at having to call out John this way, because I've been trying to avoid this for years, but apparently the time is here. Imagine for a second that where you grow up actually matters. That shouldn't be a leap, I know, but like take it really seriously, right? Like down to the geography. Like if you grew up in the mountains versus you grew up on the plains. And that the way the people around you treat you and nature and each other really matters, right? And the way in which they interact with the governance, the authorities around them also matters, okay? And that influences the language that they use, and the language that they use influences them, right? And so your thought is shaped by your physical environment and your language is determined by your thought. Thought comes first, okay? And let's just call that culture. I'm being a little reductive, understood. I'm trying to prove something very important to my viewers here. You can't express your language to somebody outside your culture in an exact and precise way. How close you can get might be up for debate. I understand that. But there's already a translation problem. The person you're speaking to didn't grow up with the same culture, right? And you need to understand enough of their culture, even if you speak the same physical language. You need to understand enough of their culture to convey those deep religious ideas to them. And they also need to have the skill to interpret your conveyance back into their language and into their culture correctly. Now, what I will state is that this is virtually almost certainly impossible, and that the level and amount of error when trying to do something like this, when the gap is great enough, is not something you can easily overcome. You can add to this that language translation is extraordinarily difficult, especially between certain types of languages. So let me give you an example. I think I've mentioned this previously. In Greek, the context determines which definition the word has. So you can't take a Greek word and say it's equivalent to this Latin word or English word. You can't do it. It's not possible. In Hebrew, it's worse. The context determines which vowels, which determine which word, and those words also don't map exactly to other words in other languages because the functioning of the language is fundamentally different. This is amplified in the East, by the way. This is a far worse problem because they come from a pictographically written language. And so a lot of the conveyances of their language were done through text and not through speaking. Not saying the speaking didn't happen. I'm not saying the philosophical Silk Road, which is indistinguishable from the Silk Road, by the way, so kind of an unnecessary designator. Yeah, we're trading goods, but we didn't speak to one another and we didn't trade ideas. Sure, you didn't. That translation is much more difficult. And so I think what happens is it is impossible for you to understand the religion of another culture. Maybe not for everybody, but almost certainly for you and for John Vervaeke for sure. I have spoken to many first generation and people from the East who just were here, right? People about Buddhism. Okay. They flat out reject the terminology and framing of Westerners. Flat out. No. That's not correct. Right. Almost all of this came from Alan Watts, by the way. And Alan Watts was talking to heretics who had been kicked out of their country. That might be important. About their, quote, religious beliefs. Okay. Not the best sample set. Also, Alan Watts is not the brightest bulb on the tree for sure. Not saying he was stupid or anything. I'm not saying he didn't have a high IQ. I'm saying that he wasn't smart enough to do what he was trying to do. And he really didn't have an understanding of what he was trying to do. And my buddy Michael recently made a comment to me about, which is something I kind of knew, but sort of had forgotten. A lot of these Westerners go over to the East, to India, China, whatever, and they study over there for like 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. And then effectively what seems to happen is that they get told that they have achieved the highest level that they can achieve. They usually mistake this for the highest level that is achievable because they're usually very arrogant people to begin with, right? Who are prone to misinterpretation of that kind. And they are told this because those people want to get rid of them. That's why they're told this. They already don't like Westerners. I don't blame them. I don't like Westerners either most days. Fair enough. And they want them in the culture because they're not adding anything. They're just subtracting. They're there to get something out and leave. That's consumerism, roughly speaking. Sure, we have a very consumerist culture. The ones that don't do that probably go live simply in the mountains of Nepal, hopefully. Boy, I want to go to Nepal someday. Probably couldn't make it because I'm way too sick, but it's a dream. That's actually important. The misunderstandings that Westerners have about Buddhism, this is Western Buddhism, I call it, are too numerous to list. I don't even have a list in my head. It's just too big. I've talked to many, many, many people, first generation and zero generation people from the East about this exclusively. They are adamant that our understanding is ridiculous and incorrect. Period. Flat out, 100%. That's just what they've told me. All of them. All the ones that I've discussed it with. And it's not a small number. I don't know why there's a gap. There's a talk on YouTube. It's on my Discord server somewhere about this Western Buddhist idea where it's wrong. And Eastern Buddhism and Western Buddhism don't have a lot of crossover at the end of the day. Our claims about what the East thinks are wrong. We think differently. See the Geography of Thought. It's a great book. I don't know why this is defensible. I don't know why anybody cares. I don't know why John cares. I don't know why it matters. Christianity is in your culture as a Westerner. It's or Anglo-Catholicity, and it's more likely that that will work for you than your ridiculous Western conception of what the East is doing. I don't know why John needed to be in this conversation. I don't think he added anything to the discussion whatsoever. He might have added something to Jonathan and Jordan's understanding of his concerns. I wouldn't call that adding anything to the discussion. All he seemed to do is drag Christianity down, or his conception of it, and say, I agree a lot, say there are disagreements, never list any of them, and continue to say God is equal to the agape dialogos, or the love that loves love and is the same love as the love, or this concept of something that created but doesn't care, which again is impossible, right? He just seemed to be grabbing this concept and trying to depersonalize it. Now, things that are not personal are dead. Science specializes in manipulation of dead things. That might have something to do with it. So keep that in mind when you hear the science people talking, including Jordan Peterson, which will be my next commentary, because that time has come as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm exhausted. I'm not going to do the last 2 minutes or whatever's left here. I'm going to leave it here. I think this is kind of the end of the conversation anyway. And leave me a comment. Let me know how I did. Let me know if you understood. Like, I'm not claiming a superior position. Again, I mean, I have one by virtue of them doing the video and me being able to watch it. But everybody has that. And not everybody has my skill set at deconstructing this, so-called, or rather, re-aspectualizing it from a different perspective, because that's something I'm kind of specialized in. And I also have a knowledge of all three of these guys that exceeds your average knowledge, right? And that's part of the way I'm able to do this. I don't think other people necessarily can do this, and that's okay. This is a cautionary tale. I'm not telling you what to do. I like the idea, as I mentioned, those first couple comments on the first video, of having a practice or whatever, slowing down, not getting enchanted by abstract words and high-minded thought. I think that's a good practice, and I hope everybody gets something out of this. See you next time.